In 2018, in March, the ECOWAS court, right, that you see before you, issued a statement or issued a judgment in a case of torture victims that we assessed that had escaped from Gambia and were in exile in Senegal. And in this decision, where they awarded actually damages to these journalists who were tortured and abused by Agomoh in Gambia, the court actually became one of the first courts to acknowledge and to state that being forced to be in exile was an injury and it was a harm that should receive reparations because of torture. Right, that this individual specifically suffered because he was forced to, torture forced him to escape. And his life and any injury or suffering that he experienced while in Senegal, right, not having a job, being away from his family, in fact, having worsening PTSD, was a result of this torture experience. In fact, this court was one of the first to recognize that being in exile is an injury caused by torture. Now, we have two newspaper articles. You may have seen these. Actually, in March 2021, these were issued. And they were issued in the case of a woman called Nazanin. She is a British British citizen of Iranian descent and an NGO worker. She went to Iran to visit her family in 2016, right? She actually brought her young daughter, who was a baby at the time, to visit her parents. The Iranian authorities arrested her. They tried to basically force her to become a spy. She refused and she was imprisoned for many years. And there has been a lot of diplomacy over the last 5-6 years in which she was imprisoned to try to get the UK government to pressure the Iranian government to release her. All of this time, the UK government refused to call her treatment at the hands of the Iranian government torture. They said it was unfortunate. They said maybe she was being ill-treated, but they refused to call her experience torture. The IFEG, the Independent Forensic Expert Group, was asked to conduct a remote medical legal evaluation of her over several days while she was at her family's home. And we issued a report, which was presented to the government and made public. And here you see that suddenly on the front page is a discussion about how she suddenly reveals 5 years later that she was tortured in Iran, as if no one really knew before. And we have an opinion piece also that states very specifically the government needs to redouble its efforts to secure Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe's release following new evidence that she has been tortured while hostage in Iran. Right? There was no real new evidence. Right? She had been talking about her experience for the last 5 years. Right? She was brutally tortured, threatened, abused. She lived in deplorable conditions in a Iranian prison famous for poor conditions where political prisoners are being kept. But still, the government refused to accept it until we were able to issue a comprehensive evaluation, right? Which suddenly they call new evidence, right? So that's I guess the second point I was hoping to make. The forensic evaluation really is about pulling together and creating a picture of the torture experience and creating a real understanding that is, in fact, difficult to ignore for both courts and governments and public opinion.